we take ownership of detecting, containing, and contextualizing threat signals. And I'm using that word threat signal on purpose. We'll discuss why in a moment. But our aim is to hammer out, when we get a signal, is this a false positive? I don't want to wake you up at 2 a.m. You don't want to wake up at 2. Nobody wants to be awake at 2, right? And with our 24/17, there's a very good chance you could be awake at 2 a.m. However, when it's a true positive, we do want to wake you up. We do want to send a report, and it needs to have the appropriate severity. So for overtly malicious threat signals like Mimikatz, you almost don't need a human, right? You know it's bad, it's obviously bad. But there are some vaguer, more contextual threat signals where the machine is crying out with the EDR saying, hey, something isn't right. And I think that demonstrates the value of what ThreatOps and what managing Huntress's EDR brings. So I wanted to talk about that with ScreenConnect. I want to talk about that with ScreenConnect for a reason, because ScreenConnect is trade-aware. And Topher introduced me to this term, and another SE introduced into that term. So trade-aware is something that you're going to use as part of your everyday usage, but it's actually also part of the adversaries toolkit. It's also part of how adversaries complete their tradecraft. So you use it for system administration, they use it for very much not system administration. Right. So if you're not sure what ScreenConnect is, oh, sorry, dude, I've interrupted you.
No, you're quite all right. I just wanted to make sure we expand on that, right? And that it's software that's legitimate, but being used in a malicious way. And so this is very hard for end users to catch and detect, because the software itself is going to have a benign hash. It's not going to flag any signature-based antivirus or anything like that. These are programs that you use every day that a hacker is using for unintended purpose. So just want to clarify that for sure.
No, 100%. And so the thing with ScreenConnect is a remote access tool, right? It allows you to, it's essentially like RDP. It allows you to administrate, it allows you to do all the kind of things that a legitimate system administrator would. And the reason that ThreatOps is quite good with ScreenConnect is that we've worked out how to work out when something is going to be a good or bad ScreenConnect. So we threw some stats in. I thought this was quite cool. So from January 1st to when I collected this, which was March 14th, we've processed 131 threat signals to do with ScreenConnect, and those were malicious. So let's just think this through. Since January, Huntress have identified 131 times that threat actors picked up ScreenConnect, deployed it in an environment, and went, great, we're here. Now, of course, we kicked them out, and that isn't the point. The point here is, well, how are we getting there? And could they do it with other tools? They absolutely can. So I'm going to take us on a little journey about, well, how do we figure this out? The first way that we can figure this out is global prevalence. So global prevalence is this idea that can you look at all of your telemetry and ascertain what is normal and abnormal? I'll give you an example. So Huntress collects a butt ton of telemetry. I wouldn't like to say how many endpoints we have, but it's somewhere in the 2 million mark at this point, right, Topher?
That is correct. We are just shy of 2 million.
Just shy of 2 million. Yeah, yes. So we could call it 2 million. Let's just say, what's 2 million amongst friends, right? So right. 2 million worth of telemetry, that's a lot of telemetry. And what we can do really easily with our EDR is say, hey, how common is this particular thing? So with ScreenConnect has a number of tells. One of them is a ID, but the other will be a URL or a domain or an IP. So in the example on the slide, all we've done is we've extracted the ScreenConnect domain. So this is connecting to pdhelp.info. And we've gone to our EDR search parameter and we said, hey, can you just tell me how often we even see this? Well, if I see that we see this 100,000 times, it's probably fine, it's prevalent. Whereas if I only see it twice, as we do in this example, something isn't adding up. Something is making this stand out, right? It's abnormal. And so this is just really, it's almost like, what's the opposite of machine learning? Like dumb human. Like it's almost that, right? It's almost going, well, hold on a second, this isn't right. Let's take a look. So again, you will find that there are some false positives, right? Sometimes it's legacy stuff from older MSPs and they maybe didn't wipe a particular machine that had that connection. I don't know, but it's probably more often than not malicious. Gonna grab some water.
Of course you can.
And it's not just global prevalence, right? So we don't have to look telemetry wide because often we know bad domains, we know bad IPs. We're really, really good with our threat intelligence at feeding stuff back in that we find elsewhere. But we have some real kick-ass people who are doing threat intel out in the community. And so they often bring it back. They've gone phishing, they bring us back to fish and we're able to do work with it. So it's really easy with our EDR to say, hey, I know this to be a bad domain. I know this to be a bad IP. And so the threat operations team is able to almost like enable and say, hey, every time I see thing, let me know. Well, when that happens, as you can see on the screen, it comes up in bright red and it says, hey, that thing that you wanted to see, that signal that you told me was bad, it's right here. Well, then that's superb. So then we go and look and say, well, I know this domain is bad and I know you shouldn't be doing that. So click, isolate. And now it can't access the machine, because that's the point of ScreenConnect, right? Adversaries want to be able to run commands all on your machine without you realizing it, but they're not going to get that. So domain reputation, wonderful. But there are other ways, man. So the method of install.
Before we get there, I do want to ask, right? Because you talk about CTI, or cyber threat intelligence, right? And the fact that we gather so much of it internally, and that our ThreatOps team is no stranger to it externally, certainly familiar with how to read it and ingest it. Can you talk about like what big of a difference it makes to have a dedicated team that's looking at that information day in and day out, as opposed to you know, like a small organization of only a few people? Yeah. You and I both, you know, have worked in the space for a long time. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So throw in chat if you've ever been a one-person sysadmin team, a one-person security team. Just throw it in the chat because I'd love to know. So I've worked in places where I was the detection engineer, the incident responder, the SIEM engineer. It was essentially me by myself, right? And it is so wonderful to work at places like Huntress, where you have dedicated teams, where there is this conveyor belt of just excellence, where you know that what's coming up has been really hammered out, really thought through. So when you're getting a detection from the R&D detection engineering team, as someone in the ThreatOps team, I'm like, this is great, right? This is exactly what I need, because I don't want to have to worry about, oh shoot, now I have to refine this. But equally, when Joe Slowick, who's a legend in our community, says, hey, there's a real weird IP, I don't need to question it, right? It's like, no, this does not have Joe's blessing as an IP. I'm going to go and look for it. So having dedicated resources is different. Not every security company and not every organization does security this way. One of the real cool things about Huntress as well, Topher, is we have people that wrote the book. Yes. We have people who wrote the book on malware analysis, on digital forensics, okay? And for me, it's huge, because these are people whose books I read to like learn how to do it. So when I work with them, they're just as awesome in the book as they are in real life.
In person, same. So, well, I don't want to interrupt your flow too much. I know we have limited time. I do also want to point out, though, that a lot of these dash screenshots you're seeing are very similar to the partner's dash. And these are things that you would see in your dash in the case of an incident. Some are stuff that Dray works with. We use the same dash internally that the partners see. And that's also intentional to make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as UI. So go on.
Yes, sir. So other ways that we can start to ascertain if a ScreenConnect connection isn't legitimate is the method of the install, right? And this is where we can sometimes roll up our sleeves and get real hands-on with the data. So I've worked in security companies where the security analysts are good, but if they move away from the dashboard, hey, they're in trouble. And our EDR is good, but it can't answer everything if we've been installed after the fact. And something I'm very passionate about that we do here, and we do it real well, is we try to get to root cause analysis. We try to say to you, hey, here's how this bad thing happened. Here's what we know about it, and here's how to stop it from happening again. And so what you're seeing on the screen is us actually deploying some digital forensics techniques. So this is specifically the activities cache that's specifically on your Windows 10 machines. But we had a signal and we were like, right, we know this to be bad, but we don't know where this has come from because this machine has just joined, right? Let's pull a forensic, let's investigate this. And so we worked out, hey, here's the time of install. We even worked out the user, right? And so we weren't even yet installed on the machine, but it's because our threat operations team are like little mini ninjas when it comes to getting good work done. Yes, our EDR is awesome and it does help us out and it does spoon feed, right? But when it isn't there, we're still just as awesome. We're still able to get answers. And I love that. So with ScreenConnect, yeah, if I see that it's being installed from like totally legit.exe, I'm just going to assume, right, that I should look into this further. And that's exactly what we can do. And we could do that at scale with the EDR as we're driving it. But we can also drill down that little bit deeper to get you a better answer.
Definitely. I love that you talked about that because I was going to bring up, how do we get insight into the systems? Oh no, I might have cut out there.
It's all right, dude. I knew what you was asking. So yeah, so and in terms of digital, so it isn't always as complicated as
I'm on the road. I'm on the road, yeah.
Don't worry, dude. It's not even as complicated as digital forensics. So our EDR isn't just a visibility layer, right? Like we can interact with the machine in very carefully cultivated ways. So we're quite paranoid at Huntress. We don't just want to run code on your endpoints. We've all seen what supply chain compromise can do. We don't want to be supply chain compromised, right? And we're not going to be. However, we have dedicated tasks where we're able to go and collect files, go and look at particular directories, and that really helps us scale, right? Because then you could start to build almost like a SOAR-like response. So you see a particular threat, you know you're going to go and collect these particular logs, these particular files. Again, our analysts are trained to know how to read those, to know how to understand those. So ScreenConnect, it has a number of forensic markers. We have dedicated pages that our analysts can go to if they ever forget, so that they don't need to ask me or another senior person. And so again, with our EDR, with our technology, it's a level setter. It makes sure that across 24/7, you're getting a uniform service. That's something I'm super passionate about. I don't want it to be any one person or any one region is feeling like they can't deliver the 18. We are all on the 18, and it's great.
Awesome.
Cool. And there is one other way that you can figure out. I mean, there's lots of ways, but the only one we're going to talk about. There's another way. And what happens after ScreenConnect is installed, right? So sometimes you're just not going to be able to differentiate that a ScreenConnect connection is legitimate or illegitimate without further context. Great. Well, then one way to get context is observe. And so we've shared in a number of public places, so you could see a tweet down there, where ScreenConnect is part of the Adversaries campaign. And now, obviously, for us, for you and I, that's awful. You don't want them to use ScreenConnect, but for us, it's fascinating as well. Like, it's bad, but it's also like, this is really interesting. Because if I watch them, not only can I figure out, okay, what are you specifically trying to do? But it's what should I go and look for in other instances, right? And so it feeds back into detection engineering. So what I love about looking at post-install stuff is it's fascinating to see the tradecraft that adversaries are using ScreenConnect for, and then sharing that as quick as we can. Like, we are so passionate about just getting stuff out in the community, because I just love to talk. I just love to share. I want to tell you about all the cool stuff we're doing, not to flex, but so that you can action it. So without even needing to buy stuff, as long as you're following Huntress or me on Twitter, you're already probably going to get some value. I'm gonna grab some water for dramatic effect.
Dramatic effects. Pause.
Dramatic effect, yeah.
Yeah.
But Topher, it's not always that easy, right? And sometimes we do have partners who we send a report out, we packaged it all up, and they're like, I can't tell if Topher's cut out or no, I don't want to speak over you.
No. I'm all right. I'm here. I promise. So, yeah, this happens all the time. And one of the cool things about Huntress too, and just to peel the layers back a little bit, because that's kind of the point. That's what we wanted to accomplish here today. Is that, internally, everybody has access to all this information. So I'm faking the freeze. That's right. I should have posed. And so, we see this all the time, no matter what team we're on. People reject these remediations all the time. But one of the cool things about Huntress, one of the reasons I'm here, is this is the first place I've seen where when someone rejects a remediation and tells us, no, this is legitimate, this is software that I use, going back to Traderware in this case, we reach out and, we prove our stuff. We're saying, no, this is not legitimate. This is why we think that's the case. We have information in the report that we gave you. This version of ScreenConnect, or this instance of ScreenConnect rather, is talking to the Czech Republic. All of your other instances of ScreenConnect are talking to Wilmington, Delaware, right? And so, not to say that we're always correct, right? We can be wrong and we can be honest. Yeah, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so Topher's freezing up a little bit, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about that interaction. So I've worked at security companies where you send a report or an alert, and that's it. That's the end of your conversation with the customer or the partner. It's okay, good luck. We are different. We will come back and say, hey, we're not too sure on your rejection. So we're validating the rejection. But we're also not afraid to say when we were wrong, right? And so I'm going to share in chat. You're welcome to copy, paste, save it for later. So this is a really cool conversation from Tom Lawrence, who runs Tom Lawrence Systems, where he puts sort of Huntress data and S1 data into conversation and kind of talks about, hey, what do they do well? What do we do well? But I think that's a really great video for people to see our commitment to transparency. We're happy to share. What do we detect? Why do we detect it? Why did we miss a particular thing? How do we make sure we don't miss particular things in the future? It's very rare that we don't know the answer to something, but it's even rarer that we just won't share it. The commitment to transparency is outrageous. If you DM me a question I probably shouldn't answer, I will still try to get you the answer nonetheless. All right. It is a huge differentiator of what we do. And if you're ever in doubt, by the way, of the kind of interactions that you can have with Huntress, our support team is amazing. So you're not relying on like one person. The global ThreatOps support team is, I believe, just as big as the analyst team. Like, it is amazing. It's 24/5 with some overlay of the weekend, but they are just as sharp, just as technical as anyone you can find here. And that's what's quite nice about working here. Everyone's pretty good at their jobs. Can't always say that at other companies, but here people are really good.
That is so true. And the point that you made, though, is that our support team sits, and I'm using that term loosely because obviously we're a fully remote company, hence my internet issues. I will be home for the rest of these and not have that problem. Gigablast for the win. But our support team actually sits with our analysts. They're under the same umbrella, and so if you ever have a question or anything, you can put it in the chat right in the dash, and they'll get you in touch with the correct person internally. Almost immediately. It just blows my mind.